Start again. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson on non-verbal reasoning. Phew, I got that out in the end. Please subscribe to this channel, even if I can't talk. Don't forget that the worksheet for today's lesson is in the video description. I strongly recommend that you download it and print it off if you haven't already. You can always pause the video, even if you're watching live. And please check out the other links in the video description. And don't forget, these lessons are live every Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. Whoa, got through that. Okay. Let's get started with today's lesson. And my tablet that I write on has closed itself down. This is going wonderfully, people, wonderfully. Right, I think we're there. Let's get going. Thank you for everybody who's commenting. It's fantastic to see you all. Special request, please don't spam the comments with millions and millions of posts from the same person, because it gets annoying for other people who want to contribute. Hello to everybody who said hello. Okay, anyway, enough of all that. Let's have a look at this first question. So, rather than giving you a list of things you need to do as you do NVR, I'm going to bring up useful points of technique as we go through. I think that's the most sensible approach. So with a question like this, in fact, let's look at the question, because that's always rather important, isn't it? Choose a figure on the right that goes best in the empty square on the left. Notice best. Obviously, there will be a rule, and you should find the rule and put in the thing that fulfills that rule. But at the end of the day, if you can find various options that don't seem to go comfortably, the one that's the most natural fit may well be the right answer. And you can see here in the example, it's a really, really easy one, just to make the point that in each row, we've got the same figure getting larger from right to left. That's obvious, and therefore you can see it's clearly this one. We don't spend time on this. It's just a basic example of how to fill in the answer. Okay, let's look at this, which is a little bit more challenging. So we can see here that we've got lots and lots and lots of stars with sort of kite strings attached to them, I suppose. Maybe it's a balloon of a star that's drifted off into the sky after some funfair. So anyway, first thing we want to do, I think, is see whether these figures really are the same as each other, or whether that's just some kind of illusion. So let's look at a few things. Let's look at the string. It always branches out in this direction, then bends back on itself and goes round. So looking at all these, we can see that they're all following the same approach. And we can see they all flick up at the end in that direction, pointing a little flick that points in an anti-clockwise direction, as it were. Not as it were, it does point in an anti-clockwise direction. What am I on about tonight? Anyway, okay, so the tails, we can be fairly confident are all the same as far as we can tell. What about the stripes? Are they all going in the same direction? Well, we can see that one thick stripe meets the point where the string is attached. So let's go around. We can see it's the same there. I'm just picking some at random. It's the same there. It's the same there. Yeah, we can see that that's happening across these figures. So having looked at all those things, I suppose the other thing to check is the stars have the same number of points. Yes, they've all got 5 points. So these are all the same figure, but rotated in different ways. So we have to find the right rotation. So the first thing you might be tempted to do is to look from left to right, like this. But you can see straight away that there isn't any consistent movement from left to right, because the string here and the string here are pointing in very similar directions, but this one here is off in a completely different way. Same here, this one and this one are very similar, but this one's in a completely different direction. So it's pretty hard to find any reliable rule from left to right. What about if we go from top to bottom? So here we can see that the string is pointing this way. Then we can see that it's pointing this way. By the way, these arrows I'm drawing on now I think are very helpful. And then we got it pointing this way. So we can see there's actually a 90-degree turn between each of these arrows that we've drawn on. So what's happening here, it seems in this column that as we go down, the figure rotates 90 degrees of right angle to the right. Let's see whether that applies to the next column. So once you've got a rule, you need to test that rule. So here we are. We've got it pointing like this. Then we got it pointing like this. And then we got it pointing like this. So indeed, we do seem to be following that rule. Okay, now let's look at these then. So let's be slightly more careful. So we're like that. And then we're like that. So we're going to want one that's pointing like that. Well, that seems to match. None of the others seem to. So A is going to be our answer. Okay, now I took quite a lot of time over that, but sometimes if one's really tricky, you do need to spend a little longer on it. In practice, once you've spotted the rule, you can see that neither this nor this is anywhere near, and that this one has rotated far too much, so really A is the only plausible option once you've worked out what the rule is. On to the next. What's happening in the comments? Lots of people posting their answers. That's great, but please do not post your answer lots of times. Helmina, I'm looking at you. Just post it once so people can see that. Right, okay. This one here looks really, really simple. So we got circle, circle, circle across the top, rounded square, rounded square, rounded square across the bottom. So in the middle, of course, it's going to be a hexagon. It must be. So we can get very easily down to these two, B and D. But which one is it going to be after that? And this is where it becomes a bit tricky, because we look across the row here, for example, and we've got circle, square, I'll call it square, hexagon. At the bottom there, we've got hexagon, circle, circle. So we can't even say there's one of each in each row. What about here? We got circle, square, hexagon. And on the right, we got hexagon, square, circle. So what's going on there? Is there any particular rule? Pretty hard to spot. So where are we going with this? Now let's think about the whole figure. So what about circles? We've got circle, circle, circle. Is there any pattern there? Not that I can see yet. We got square, square, square. That's a very different pattern. But hang on, in both these cases, I've found 3 of them. So now if we look at hexagon and hexagon, and there isn't a third one. So that must mean that B here is our answer, because that's the one that gives a big hexagon fitting in the middle row, and it also means that we have 3 each of the inner shapes. So here there are 2 different kinds of rule overlapping, and although it's quite a simple question, it should get you in the habit of thinking about separate elements as you answer non-verbal reasoning problems. Because if you started off by thinking this must be a hexagon with a circle or whatever, you tried to find the outer and the inner together, you wouldn't get there. You have to think the rule for the outer is rows, the rule for the inner is numbers, 3 of each shape. Okay, what have you got here? So here we've got different patterns of dots. It's really hard to draw any conclusion about their layout here, I think. We've got 2, then we've got 7, then we've got 3. Can't see any obvious relation there. Let's try going down. We've got 2, we got 4, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oops. Nothing really doing for me there. 7, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 3, 5. I can't see any pattern there at all. So now we need to think about the whole figure. So what have we got? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. The only one missing is 6. So I reckon we need 6 dots. And in fact, that must be B. It's the only one with 6 dots, is it? C is 5 and D is 7. So B must be our answer. So this is about being flexible. Sometimes, very often with these, the pattern is going to be about things in rows or columns or diagonals. But sometimes you're looking for sets of things across the whole shape and looking for things that are missing. Okay, right. On to the next. I've got my answers down on the sheet here just so I don't make some terrible mistake while I'm doing this, as has happened in the past, as some of you know. All kinds of things can happen when you're live. Right, looking at this then. So what have we got? Well, it looks like, difficult to say. It looks like the colours are lining up in diagonals. Stripy pyjamas up there, black colours here, thin stripes here and here. But then which one would go in the next? Not sure we have enough information to be sure, do we? I mean, it could be that it's every 2, because you've got thin stripes here and thin stripes here. So maybe it's black ones, then black ones here. But it's hard to be sure, even if that's likely. But you can also see that you've got 3 stripy pyjamas there. You've got 3 narrow stripes. And we've got 2 black shapes. And so this really wants us to put a black shape, which would be A in this space. What happens if we do that? So let's put a black circle. That's blue is my version of black. We can say a filled in circle if you want. Well, what does that give us? Well, hang on, this gives us a row of circles. And actually looking this way, you've got a row of stars and a row of arrows. So that seems to fit really well. So what I've done there is I've followed my first instinct, but then I've looked at how that first instinct matches up with other factors I might not have thought of, and I've seen how it's confirmed from various different directions, so I can be really, really certain of this. These are relatively straightforward questions, but I think they're useful for getting you into the habit of thinking in a certain way about these picture problems. Hudmaster says there is no A, so the answer is A. That's very gnomic. I think I know what you're getting at, and I agree with you. Okay, 15 here. So what have we got? We got big hexagon, little lozenge, we'll call it, and big egg. Got something, little hexagon, big hexagon. We got big lozenge, little egg. Well, what we can see is that there are big and small versions of each kind of shape. So we've got 2 big lozenges there and a little one. We've got 2 big hexagons there and a little one. We've got a big egg and a little egg. So we're missing a big egg. It must be C. So sometimes you just need to give yourself the freedom to look around, see what patterns you spot, and it drops out in the end. These are all quite straightforward. I've looked at some harder NVR in some previous videos, but sometimes just to get a handle on the way of thinking about it, some slightly simpler problems can be useful. Okay, this might prove to be slightly more analytical, maybe a little trickier. Select the figure that is most unlike the other options in its row. Okay, interesting. And we can see with this example that what's happening is that each of the little inner shapes, which is filled in black, is actually a shrunken version of the outer shape, just rotated, except for B, where this shape is not a shrunken version of the outer shape there. And so B is the one that's unlike the other options. Now, do take your time. This is so basic, but it's so important. Do take your time to read the question really carefully. If you didn't read this question and properly pay attention to the word unlike, you might do something completely different. You might start circling things that do look like other options, or I don't know what you might do. Take the time to read the question, even if you think you know the question types, to make sure that you are doing the right thing. It's so vital. Right, okay. Let's crack on with this one. I was just going to glance at the comments there, but no one's really talking to me, which is great, so I can just get on with teaching. You're all chatting to each other, which is lovely. So here we've got circles in the middle of each shape. Do we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we do, and they're all the same size so far as we can see with the naked eye, which is good enough. Are these circles, are they horizontal, vertical, or diagonal? Horizontal, diagonal, 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 horizontal. No verticals. So there's no pattern there we can use because there isn't an odd one out. There are 2 that are horizontal and there are 3 that are diagonal. In A, it's linking points that aren't corners, here and here. But in B, it is linking corners. Now that could be something useful. C is linking corners, D is linking corners, E is linking not corners. So A and E are not linking corners, so that can't be our pattern either. So now, again, have a step back and think about what sorts of figures these are. Where might you have seen a dotted line like this across a shape? What does it look like? Well, if I look at A again, this is actually a line of symmetry on the shape, isn't it? Because this part could flip up and form this part without distortion. Oops, that was the world's worst ever arrow. C yeah, line of symmetry. D, line of symmetry. E, line of symmetry. B, well, I hope you watched my lesson on symmetry last week. Yes, last week, where we looked at this particular problem a bit, because B will look to many people like a line of symmetry. But if you don't understand what I'm doing here, rewatch that lesson from last week. If I zoom in massively, that's as far as it can go. Okay, if I take this point here, go to the mirror line by the shortest route, go the same distance the other side, this point would end up here, not here. This is not a line of symmetry. In fact, if you take a diagonal line of symmetry across a diagonal line across a rectangle, make it into a line of symmetry, what you get is a kite like that and a kite like that, giving us another skewed rectangle. So B is the one that doesn't work. Whoa, too far. Because this is not a line of symmetry. So sometimes you have to go through quite a lot of possibilities before you find the thing that's right, unless you're lucky enough to spot it early on. Loads of people here are writing E. I wonder why you're writing E. I'm glad that not everybody's got this right. It means I've got some work to do, which gives me a sense of purpose in life. I think you chose E because you thought this shape didn't have any corners, but neither does A. That's not a corner, that's a curve. So just be careful. It's good to have a first instinct, but then you need to test that first instinct against what's there and make sure that it works. You saw me doing that, particularly with the first set of questions with those grids. I'd find something that might fit, but then I'd check to see, for example, whether that also worked with the diagonals, for instance, if there was something like that that could give me a clue. Okay, on to the next. Whoa, this looks complicated. This looks really complicated. So this is the kind of question that gets people confused in all manner of ways. Well, first thing to think about is, are these lines, the big chum chum chum, are these the same in rotation in each case, or is there a difference? So this should always be pointing in an anti-clockwise direction if these are all the same. So here, yup, it's pointing that way. Here, yup, it's pointing that way. Here, yep, it's pointing that way, and here, yep, it's pointing that way. By the way, when you've got problems like this, it can be really helpful to draw lots of things on them. But try to do it in a way that doesn't actually cross anything out in the problem, because that will make it harder to do more reasoning. And if possible, use a pencil so you have the option of rubbing out if you want, although rubbing out does waste a bit of time. Just make sure that you don't, if you do have answer boxes by the questions, that you don't put anything inside them until you've chosen your answer. Right, so these all have a thing kicking in an anti-clockwise direction. We can see by looking at it, by inspection, if I want to sound pretentiously scientific, that these angles are, so far as we can tell, the same as each other. And the lengths look the same as well. So we can be pretty confident that as far as we can be expected to see, that the line set up like this is the same in each case. What about these little scores across? We got 2 short and a long. Here we got 4 shorts. Here we got 3 shorts, a long, and a nah. All kinds of different things happening. What about the stars? So we got 3 stars on it here. 4, 3, 3, 3. So therefore B is the odd one out because it has 4 stars. So this looks so complicated, but in the end there was something very simple. Now it could be that you'll be lucky and the number of stars will be the first thing that you check. But the important thing again is to take each element and consider them one at a time. So in this case, if I tried to consider every aspect of it in each case, I might never have got to the answer. But I looked at the lines, I looked at the little ticks, then I looked at the stars, and the stars were it. So just be systematic. Simple advice, but not obvious to everybody. Most people will forget to be systematic at some point when they're under stress in an exam. If you're systematic and do things one step at a time, you'll end up working more quickly. Right, okay, all kinds of things here, but often it's really useful just to take a step back and look at it from a little bit of a, well, not by moving my tablet and disrupting the connection, but look at it from a little bit of a distance and just see what's going on with the shape here. And I can see, if I look at this from further away, I see something seeming to spin round. Spin, spin, spin. And so that should immediately make me think, are we looking at a rotation? Well, again, let's think about clockwise and anti-clockwise. So the first one, the boot, as it were, is kicking in a clockwise direction. Here in B, we're kicking in an anti-clockwise direction, so maybe not, but let's carry on. C, it's kicking in a clockwise direction. D, it's kicking in a clockwise direction. And E, it's kicking in a clockwise direction. So Mr. B over here is our odd one out boot. Now, of course, in an ideal world, and I should advise this as a teacher, Headmaster, you're spamming to say stop spamming. There's a certain irony in that. But yes, please, people, don't spam. Thank you. So, yes, you could check all the other factors. And you could look at where the black hexagon is and so on and so forth. But the fact is, we have found a very clear reason for B to be the odd one out. So unless it's a very badly conceived question, it wouldn't really make sense for anything else to be the answer. So B is almost without doubt going to be it. Ooh, okay. Now we got one that's kind of weird. So in each of these options we have two figures, one of which is black, one of which is white. And they've got lots of different numbers of sides. So we can start looking at that. Whoa, I don't want to count the number of sides in A. I might have to, but let's check the other options first to see whether this could be a factor. B has got 4 sides for the black shape and 7 sides for the white shape. 4 and 7 is 11. C, and there's a difference of 3. Think about all those things. So difference of 3. This one's 4, that one's 7. Total is 11. C, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, for the first one, so that's a hexagon. Very irregular hexagon. And then this one's got 4, so that's 10 altogether, and the difference is 2. Not so sure about this. D, we got 5, and then we got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that makes 13 in total. The difference is 3. Nah, there's no pattern here. There's no pattern in the number of sides. What else could it be? And there's no pattern in the differences in number of sides and so on. Again, let's just step back a little bit and let's describe each figure to ourselves. A has got an irregular pterosaur, I don't know, something or other, and a regular 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, a regular octagon. Okay. B has got an irregular quadrilateral. That means a 4-sided shape, a quadrilateral, quad. And a regular 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 septagon or heptagon, whichever you want to call it. Heptagon's probably slightly more common. C, we've got an irregular 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and an irregular 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've had 2 options with a regular shape and then one that doesn't have a regular shape. D also has a regular pentagon and E has a regular triangle, an equilateral triangle. So therefore C must be the odd one out because it's the only one without a regular shape. In other words, without a shape where all the sides and angles are the same. So in this case, we did what seemed most obvious, looking at the colours and the number of sides, and we ran into a brick wall. And then I thought, what can I sensibly do? I'm just going to describe each option to myself. I'm just going to tell myself what it is. And going through that, I spotted a difference. So that's another very simple but very useful technique for when you get stuck, when you get into a rut. On to the next. Right. So here we've got 3 figures in each option, 3 shapes. And we've got arrows between them, and we've got a mixture of black and white. So in the left one, the arrow's pointing from black to black, then it's going black to white, then it's going black to white, then it's going black to black, white. Nah, so that isn't an option. Pointing at black, pointing at white, pointing at white, pointing at black, pointing at... Nope. Pointing from black, pointing from black, pointing from black, pointing from... Oh dear. Oh no, hang on. Yeah, pointing from black, pointing from black, pointing from white. So... that might mean that E is the option out because it's the only one where the arrow is pointing from white. If we look at the other ones, we can see that it's pointing from a mixed shape to a black shape, from a mixed shape to a white shape, from a black shape to a mixed shape, from a mixed shape to a black shape, from a mixed shape to a mixed... E is the only one where there are two mixed shapes with black and white in them. It's also the only one where it's pointing from white. So E is for two reasons the odd one out here. We can be really confident about E. So again, a lot of what I've done there has been a matter of describing to myself what's going on in these different circumstances and actually using words to communicate with you, but using by having a sort of verbal conversation with myself in my head, I'm often likely to spot things that I wouldn't if I was just staring at the page thinking, what's the answer, what's the answer, what's the answer, what's the answer? So it's just being systematic and kind of talking to yourself can really make a difference. I still think these are easier problems than many of the ones in some of my other NVR lessons, but that's no bad thing because not every question is difficult, but you still need to have good techniques for reliably finding the correct answer and not leading yourself astray. Which option on the right is a top-down 2D view, two-dimensional view, of the three-dimensional figure on the left. Okay, you know what 2D and 3D are well enough to get on with this, I think. More detailed conversations for another lesson. Right. So these involve being quite flexible with your perspective, but actually you can just be very systematic. So if we look at 41 here, perhaps a relatively gentle warm-up, but still well worth thinking about carefully. So if we look from above, straight above, we would see the tops of these two. We'd see the top of this, and look very carefully around the corners, we'd see the top of this one here. So those first two would give us that. This one would fill in here, and this one round there would fill in that corner there. So in fact we end up with this C. So the easy mistakes, the mistakes that you might make here if you aren't familiar with these questions are, you might think that you're only looking at the top layer, these two here. But in fact looking from above you would see this and this in the same way, so A is not the answer. You might not notice the one poking round the back. Careful about that. That might lead you into choosing D, which could be a rotation of the top-down view, but it's not the answer. 42. Right, so we're looking from above and we are going to see this, 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 and look very, very carefully at the middle because you can see just here there's a little line which gives us a clear clue that there's a gap in the middle with a missing block. So you need to be really attentive. Wear your glasses to the exam. So that must mean that we're choosing this one here, mustn't it? Hang on a sec. Don't just rely on your instincts with these. Take the time to think about it. Now there's a bit of a problem here. I can see looking at the screen that the colours from the worksheet are not carrying through to what's being projected. So I need to tell you, if you haven't got the worksheet, this is a good point actually to say this is a really good reason always to print off the worksheet. Here this is actually an empty square and this is an empty square. It's super clear on the worksheet but it's just not coming through on the screen. Anyway, so you might jump at this one, but hang on, let's sketch it. So this here will be there. This here joins it at the corner there. This here joins it at the front corner. And this here joins those two. There isn't one here. There's no block there. So we got these four around here and a gap in the middle. So it's D over here. Whoa, easy there, tablet, don't get carried away. And that's our answer. So it can be really useful to take the time to draw these sketches. They can really help. Again on this one. So we're looking from above. So what do we see? Do we see all these? No, because they're all hidden by the top one. We just see this. So once you know what you're doing with these, this should actually be a really simple one. But it's kind of there to trick you, because you might look at this and just not believe that that could be the answer. But it's the answer. Okay, this one here. So looking from above, we're going to see this. Let's do the sketch at the same time this time. We're going to see this one here that joins onto it directly. So that's going to be right next to it there. We're going to have this one here, which is in front of that one. So you see I'm thinking, how does each block attach to the block next to it? And then we got this one up here, which is above there. Look at my beautiful drawing. What an artist I am. So we've ended up with this. Check the other options quickly. This one would require this middle one here to be missing, which it isn't. This one here would require there to be something lurking there. Well, we can't see anything sticking out there. And this one here is just a load of nonsense. So it's clearly option A here. Just checking my answers to make sure I haven't done the crazy thing again. Right, on to the last one. We're romping through today. Great. So here we've got something that really looks like this, doesn't it, or this? But let's take a moment and check it. So what have we got? We've got 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 this way, and 1, 2, 3, 4 across the back. And then going this way, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that way. And we've also got one here that hooks in and a gap there. So we need to look for all those things in our answer. So they're all 4 across. That's the same for every one of these. But this is also 4 in that direction. This is not 4 in that direction. Neither is this. C and D are. Okay, what's the difference between C and D? Let's look at the answers now. C has got this little hook, whereas D does not. And here we've got that cube there. So C must be our answer. So again, it's just about having methods and being systematic. These have been some relatively straightforward questions today, but it's often the straightforward questions that allow you to really develop your technique. It's a little bit like if you're doing comprehension exercises, written comprehension, for example, any kind of comprehension. It's often when you're doing the easier things that you can get the really good systems and habits. Say I do this, then I do this. So I look at the question, I find the keywords, I look at the number of marks, I look at the answer space, I think about the structure. Often it's easier to learn those skills when the questions are quite easy than it is when the questions are really difficult. Okay, let's fire on to the tip of the week, and then it's going to be time to take your questions. So if you've got questions, you can start sticking them in the comments now if you want, but please don't spam by putting the same comment zillions of times. Thank you very much. So the tip of the week. Something I say quite often, but it's super important, so I'm going to say it again. Don't get carried away with timing your work. Lots of people do this. They time, and they're constantly thinking, can I do it that tiny bit faster? But what happens is they end up practicing timing rather than practicing their skills. And often through doing it, their timing actually doesn't get better. Because when you work more and more quickly, you often end up making the same mistakes more and more quickly. And so you reinforce your weaknesses as much as your strengths, rather than giving yourself the time to notice where your weaknesses are and address them in a way that will allow you then to speed up. So doing some time practice is useful, occasionally. When the exam is really close, I mean like 2 or 3 weeks, doing a lot of time practice can be useful. But apart from that, most of your practice should be slow, untimed, careful, and focused on making your skills as strong as possible. because that, my friends, is the way that you will ace the 11 plus exam or any other exam. Okay, right, time, as I said, to go on to Racer has asked for the question I'd love to answer. How do you get your books? I'm new. I think you mean new. I joined YED today. I'm only making fun of you. I understand you're typing quick comments. It's like texting, but it's just funny. Anyway, how do you get my books? You can get my books from Amazon. They're all there. You can get them from the RSL Educational website. Go into the description under this video and there's actually a link to the shop there where you can buy my books. And you can also get them from some bookshops and some other online retailers and so on. So all sorts of places you can get my books. Thank you for a fabulous question. Anybody else wants to ask about how they can buy my things? Oh, by the way, talking about things, a few weeks ago, loads of people were saying, are you going to make some merch? And I've gone away and thought about it and been given good advice, and I've decided that yes, I'm going to make some merch. So watch this space, because in a few weeks those people who make particularly good comments might find a special Easy 11 Plus something or other coming their way. Tony Cotton, can you do expressions video, please? You mean... No, not that kind of expressions. You must mean expressions such as... Do you mean things like, you know, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, for example, or a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. If you tell me a little bit more clearly and how it relates to 11 plus, I may be able to help. By the way, I think don't look a gift horse in the mouth is a terrible saying. It's, if a gift horse comes along, look it carefully in the mouth. It might be a Trojan gift horse. Anyway, it's not an original point of view, but I think it's true. Right, okay. In Birmingham, what schools are there? Google is your friend. I can't reel off a list of all the schools in Birmingham, sorry. What happens if you don't complete the test on time? Interesting question. I mean, obviously, if you don't finish it on time, you get fewer marks than if you had finished it all things being equal. However, somebody who works quite slowly and carefully and really makes sure to get things right and doesn't quite finish will often get better marks than someone who raced to finish it and made loads of mistakes. So not finishing on time is not the end of the world if you've worked carefully through the rest of it. I think that's what I could say on that. Why did you become a teacher, someone says. I'm not going to go too long into my autobiography because that's not that relevant to the 11 plus here, but to put it very briefly, I first became a tutor because a friend of mine who had been working in a big bank before the financial crisis, some of you might just about be old enough to have been around then, although most of you not, I would guess. Anyway, he lost his job and did some tutoring, and then he got another job and so said, do you want to take my tutee? So I got started tutoring. I got started school teaching because my old school, Christ Hospital, rang me up and said, help, we need a history teacher now. So I said, okay. And so those are the two ways that I got teaching. Right. Tahir says, can we do equations? Yes, but there are already some videos on equations in this channel. There's a video on algebra, and there's a video called Algebra That Isn't, about when you don't need to use equations, even though it looks like it. And I will do more algebra coming. Oh, there's one on sequences, which has got some good algebra in as well. So there's quite a bit on equations is ready. I'll add things in. Can we go through pi in maths? And can you tell us your real age? Yes, of course, I'm 85. Pi in maths is actually spelled P-I, not P-I-E, just for what it's worth. I would love to go through it, but it isn't an 11 plus topic. It is definitely not going to be tested at 11 plus. Therefore, it's not something I'll be covering in Easy 11 plus unless the syllabus changes. What does the S in RSL mean? It stands for secret. Are mock tests needed? Asked a million times. I I don't know, it's one of these kind of how long is a piece of string questions. I mean, I think by that you mean, should you go to a company that charges you a gazillion pounds for a mock test? Some of them are useful, some of them aren't. Only go to a good company that does really good work, gives you really detailed feedback, sets realistic tests. Don't go to a company that plagiarizes my materials to make their mock tests. If you work for one of those companies that has done that in the past, you know who you are. Yeah, sometimes they're useful, sometimes not. It does matter to have that you have exam practice, but you can have that at home if you've got good practice papers and you can set up in a quiet room with a timer, and a sibling or a parent says, right, you may now begin, and then says you've got 5 minutes left and says, please put your pen down. That's also a mock test, and if you've got someone who's competent to mark your exam well, then that could be just as good. Some people like to have the exam hall experience of doing a formal mock. So it depends what's useful for you. Certainly formal mocks can be good if they're run by good companies, but be aware that quite a lot of them aren't run by very good companies and they aren't very useful. So be a savvy shopper. Ho, ho, ho. Robert, sir, are you going to post any videos on RSL Educational? What do you mean by that? Do you mean am I going to post them on the RSL Educational website? Well, I've got a link from the RSL Educational website to the Easy 11 Plus website, so kind of. Any videos? I don't really know what you mean beyond that. I'm sorry. I'll answer as well as I can if you clarify. What happens if you fail the test? Your life goes on. It's not the biggest disaster in the world. There are lots of very good comprehensive and academy schools and so on where you don't need to do tests. There's a very good chance there'll be one in your area, and that's where you'll go. So if you're somebody, I've said this so often, but I think it's just worth saying again and again, if you are the kind of person who is watching these videos, so you're someone who works really hard for their 11 plus, who's self-motivated, who cares about their learning, you will do really well at any school. So yeah, if you fail your 11 plus, you don't go to that school, obviously, that you wanted to go to, but you'll probably do well wherever you go, so don't stress too much. How do you get the free 3 tests every week on RSL Learning? I'm afraid I do not offer any service that gives 3 free tests every week. I'm sorry. I have a service called 11 Plus Lifeline that does send you practice papers with detailed answers every week and can even involve me marking your work and so on. But that is not, I'm afraid, free. You do have to pay a certain amount for that. But the basic subscription is very cheap. It costs about £2 a week, but it's not quite free. If you do want free things, go into the video description. You'll see there's a link to free papers and solutions, and that is genuinely free, but that's one-off. That's not a weekly thing. You just get those sent to you straight away when you sign up for that. Can we do long division next week, Tuesday? I just did a video on long division and published it. Have a look in the channel. There's a video on long division there. I'm going to finish soon, by the way, because I actually have to go. I'm meeting some people after this lesson. Yes, even I have a social life. Maths forever, says Tahir. I hope not. Can you do art? Do you mean can I do art in this channel? You see my drawings whenever I explain something in maths. I think you might reach your own conclusions about whether I can do art. But no, it isn't an 11 plus topic, so I won't do a video on it especially. Can I do other channels? Maybe someday. I'm pretty busy doing this channel and everything else I do at the moment. Oh, are you going to post videos separately on the RSL Educational channel? Probably not, no, because I'm focused on posting them on this channel for the moment, and there's only one of me. Okay. Wow. I think I'm going to call it a day there. We've gone on long enough. I don't think there's a superabundance of pressing questions from you this time, which is great. It shows that I've already answered everything. Lovely to have you here this week. Please subscribe to my channel, please. Please check the links in the video description, and please be back next Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock for my next Easy 11 Plus live lesson. It's been great to have you here. Bye-bye.